Good evening, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are gathered tonight to celebrate The Perishing, the brand new novel by Natashia Déon, and we're here in conversation with Scott and Shaté Hayes, who together make up the Love Hayes podcast. They are HBCU graduates who are passionate about Black culture and empowering their community. On their podcast, they discuss purpose, wholeness, and rethinking the way we love life. I'm going to introduce Scott first. He is a licensed clinical social worker for the Domiciliary Care for Homeless Veterans program located here in Atlanta, Georgia. He is responsible for assisting homeless veterans with obtaining employment or another form of substantial income in hopes of transitioning them to permanent housing over the course of their 90-day stay and treatment. Scott has been a social worker for the last 21 years and has held direct care and administrative positions. His personal interests are in educating minority populations regarding the importance of mental health and integrating systems to include regular psychiatric care as part of an overall health and wellness. He holds a bachelor's of social work degree from Tuskegee University and a master's of social work degree from Alabama A&M University, both in Alabama. Scott is also a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated and currently resides in Metro Atlanta. We were teasing him ahead of time about him being a serious Omega. So all Omega is watching. Shout out in the chat.
Shout out to the bros.
And he is here with his wife, Shaté L. Hayes, who is a story strategist, writer, and educator with a passion for telling stories that ignite career advancement and elevate voices of marginalized populations. She leads a high-volume content production team at a market-leading ed tech company and is actively engaged in the community through career panels for artists and college students, as well as regular contributions to dance media publications such as Dance Magazine and Point Magazine. So welcome to the Hayeses. We're delighted to have you here.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. We're excited.
Thank you.
Yeah. And welcome to the Woman of the Hour, Natashia Déon. She is an NAACP Image Award nominee. She is a practicing criminal attorney and a college professor. A Pamela Cransney Moral Courage Fellow, Déon is the author of the critically acclaimed debut novel, Grace, which was named a best book by the New York Times. She has been awarded fellowships by PEN America, Prague Summer Program for Writers, Dickinson House in Belgium, the Breadloaf Writers Conference, and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. So we know you stay very busy. So we're delighted to get a little bit of your time tonight. We're delighted to be here with Auburn Avenue Research Library. They will be shouting out some additional resources in the chat. So we just want you to know, stay with us on the main conversation here. Those resources will be popping up, but they will stay up so that you can revisit this anytime you like. You can come back in a week. They'll still be here. So if you remember, I need to go check that out, just come back and share it with a friend. But thank you to Morris Gardner for holding it down for us in the chat always. We really appreciate it. And finally, we do love when you shout out where you're watching from. We also love when you ask questions. So you can do both of those things in the chat. You also can ask a question via this ask a question box down in the lower right-hand part of your screen. So I'm going to get out of here because I know we are excited to be getting right into this conversation. Thank you all so much for celebrating The Perishing with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yay! We made it. Thank you so much, Charis Books, ER, for just welcoming us. And oh my gosh, I see Michelle, aka Nisi. I see Dan, all the way in LA. Hello, he's my editor, and some other friends. And I'm just talking.
Well, I'm ready to talk about this book. It is so good.
So good.
Like he was saying, he said bars, right? Just the amount of poetry in it. And I would love to start the conversation out talking about some of the characters. I loved that we got to really know the main character. I don't even know if we want to call them characters or character, but the different stories and sides of Lou and Sarah. But what I want to start with, speaking of Los Angeles, is how prominent the city shows up in the book and almost feels like its own character. Can you talk a little bit about the idea of Los Angeles and what it means to this story and to these people in the story?
Yeah, so LA is where I was born. It's where I was raised. You know, I got Alabama roots. Scotty knows. We are spending summers there, just messing around in front of his parents' house, you know, just. But so in Grace, my first book dealt with my memory of Alabama and to honor that city. And it was a character there. And then when I wrote about LA, I wanted to make it a character as well, because LA is so vast. It's so big. And most people don't know about the Black communities just in LA. You know, different pockets. People know about South LA. They might have heard of Compton if you're Black, but they don't know about West Adams, which is where I grew up, where Hattie McDaniels lived, where a lot of prominent Black figures throughout our American history have lived. And that's where I grew up, where we used to walk to the dry cleaner, the Black dry cleaner. We used to walk to the Black ice cream parlor, or to get Bruce Lee iron-ons on our sweatshirts. You know, we used to go to the fish shop, the Black church. And then everything changed in the 90s with the introduction of that party drug, crack cocaine. So, you know, and it just changed everything. And really just, I wanted to remember her. I call LA her. I wanted to remember her in a way that made her as lovely as she is to me, as someone who lives here, because it's different for people who come and visit. They're like, there's nothing to do. Everything's so spread out, but it's a place you have to experience. And I say this in the book, like, she wants a relationship with you. You give, you get what you give. So if you show up and you're like, entertain me, dance for me, it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't really work like that. So I just wanted to honor who LA is to me, Black LA specifically, because as the first chapter starts, LA has always been brown.
I love that. And that's so true in the story. Talk about the with Afro-Spaniards that were there first. I really love that line too about you get what you give. Because as we were discussing before, I used to live there, and I thought when I read that, like, I wonder if I had that attitude when I was there, if I would have had a different experience. But it was really interesting to read about Mulholland and the Dam and all of those, the Route 66 going through the community and how they were fighting for it. And to really hear and see that side of LA, I think was really an interesting perspective for me, being on this end of having lived there before, you know?
Yeah, I mean, because I think you said you were in Burbank too, which is still LA. So every time, it's funny when I'm in court, because the city attorney's office represents the Valley, which is still LA, right? The LA, but LA is like the heart of LA, and the way they just, so I never know if I'm going to see a district attorney or what they call a city attorney. And they handle different things because LA is that divided that they actually have different attorneys that represent different parts of LA. Wow. So it's governmentally, it's a different city, depending on who you are, where you live. So you would never know unless you knew.
Yeah. Nice.
So there's so many things I want to talk about this book. So
I'm so happy to see you, Scott. I'm
so happy to see you too.
You guys, this is my cousin. Oh my God, when we were still picking our navels and eating barbecue. You're all grown and stuff and married to a beautiful woman. I was like, okay.
She did okay too.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
So, you know, on our podcast, we talk a lot about healing and wholeness and all those things. And we talk so much about like repeating the same situations until we've learned whatever lesson we need to learn. And so I thought it was interesting that the immortals, one of the things that they point out, that they're usually born around the same age every time they come back. And I'm wondering for you if that's tied to like having to learn another a lesson, like being almost doomed to repeat the same lessons over and over again when we don't learn them. So I'm interested in your perspective on that.
Yeah, so when I listened to the Love Hayes podcast, I remember one that really struck me is where you talk about, like marriage. You guys talk a lot about your relationship and moving through healing. And there's a moment where you mature, where you realize you don't have it all together, that you have, like, healing is a process. It's just not a happening, right? And so in that same way, I wanted to show that at different stages of our lives, we're healing differently. You learn one thing and it ain't over. There's a new test, and then there's a new test, and you sort of, there's not an end. It's a journey. All of this is journey. But we have to choose to heal. But like all abusive relationships, like they say abuse is like a cycle, like a cycle of abuse. Usually it's the children, it's their grandchildren, it's a cycle. And so with the immortals and the perishing, what I wanted to talk about is the cycle of abuse that we have in America. It was a way to show that we're facing the same problems over and over again. They just look, it's different faces, but it's the same kind of relationship over and over. And somebody has to break the pattern. We have to recognize it, and then we have to be brave enough to break the pattern.
That's so interesting. I got the pattern theme, but didn't really connect until you just said it about life just in general and the patterns that are repeated. And it's so interesting and on point in terms of this timely moment when they were at the City Hall and protesting Route 66 and anti-vaxxers being there and talking about not wanting to be vaccinated for polio, yeah. And talking about, I think the language that you used was like, there was a reference to smallpox and how, we've been through this before. Shouldn't we have learned already? And I was like, that's like 30s. And here we are, a century later, literally in the same experience. So
repeating
the pattern. Absolutely.
It's the same. So the anti-vaxxers with polio were there. And before then, the Spanish flu, the fight about masks, no masks, like millions. What was it? Like a third of the population of Earth died with the Spanish flu. And they're talking about, wear your mask. So it's just the same thing. And it just blew my mind reading about it in history. Like, how are we doing the same things? Even in LA specifically, where you have these anti-immigration protests, they're saying the same things, they're saying Mexicans go home, it was the same thing, like round them up, and they were constantly being, shipped out, not just Latinos, but Filipinos, Chinese, and then Japanese, of course, in the internment. But we've done these things. What's going on at the border? We've done this so many times, and it didn't work then. It's not going to work now. You just end up further fracturing a sensitive relationship when we have an opportunity to be better and do something different.
Agree.
And what is that different, do you think? How do we break the pattern cycle?
Yeah, first we have to see it. Sometimes we have to be ready, I should say, to see it. So as a therapist in training, so some of my clinical work, when I talk to clients and we talk about who are in abusive relationships, who are leaving relationships, one of the things that I'll ask is, when did you know it was time for you to go? And they'll talk about all the people that told them, it's time to go. I said, was it when your mom told you that you should leave the relationship? They were like, no. Was it when your brother? Was it when that police officer? Was it when that doctor? And they say no. They said every time somebody told me it was time to leave, it made me want to hold on even harder and longer. And I would have left maybe if no one ever told me to leave. So I say that, I give that example because I think we have to be ready to receive the truth. So when we look at critical race theory and what's happening in Texas, when they want to ban books, like they're not ready to hear the truth of what it is. There's no good side or bad side. It's just what happened. At the end of American slavery, 3 million Black Americans were freed from slavery, 3 million. And they were Black. and they were owned by a lot of white people. And it was what it was. It's not, it's not like, subjective. It's actual. That's just what it was. So I think we got to be ready to hear the truth, or we just hunker down and we want to hold on to the old way that might not be healthy for us. And I don't think relationally, I don't think we're in a healthy place in the United States of America. All of us. I'm not talking about Black people specifically. I'm talking about school shootings. We're not in a healthy place, but we have to choose.
That's a really nice thought. We have to choose. And awareness, you mentioned. Speaking of time to go, if I could ask one more question. I'm thinking about Lou, and then to your point, repeating patterns until we don't, we choose not to. When I reflect on it, Lou was only around, in that form for about a year or so. And so it had me reflecting on, did she learn everything that she needed to learn? Was her lesson in that period, in that form, to learn how to fight? So we see that she comes into an awareness that she is immortal. But can you speak to why was Lou's time so short? And Sarah, we see Lou in 31, and then Sarah's in 21 something. So why was Lou's time so brief? Did she learn all that she had come to learn? What's that about?
That's a great question. So, and I love, sometimes I'll read reviews. My agent, Dan, I'm like, I don't want to read them. Just tell me the good ones. No, no, because I have to take time to read the ones that are more critical. But I wanted, for me as an artist, I wanted to write a book that represented life, the cycles of life. And especially as a Black woman, the way that we start and restart our lives, not just because of the choices we make, but choices in our family, having children, like other people, even, and I'll always give the example of George Floyd. When that happened, we all felt it. Black men too, but Black women, it changes the way you carry yourself at work. It changes everything, we shave in our head, whatever we're doing, it changes us. So I wanted that. Her time in LA is short this time because I wanted her to learn. It was the lifetime where she learned to fight back. Like all of us learn different things at different stages of our lives, but it's not over. Like there's not this clean ending where it's all tied up in a nice bow, because that's not how life is. We, like sometimes we'll think about something, especially painful relationships that we were in, and we'll just be driving down the street like, dang, I didn't even know it was that bad. I was so, or dang, like, so it never ends. It's our ability to forgive and move on. That is the difference, and forgiveness is a process. I don't think it's just a statement, I forgive you. It's a process, So that's what I wanted her to be. Just, there was something she had to learn. And we have that in relationships as Black women. There's something we have to learn. So nothing is wasted. All of it works together for our good. Even the bad stuff. There was something we learned there. And I wanted it just to be a moment or a life or a relationship where she learned what she needed. And then she could move on stronger wherever she was going next.
You know what it puts me in the mind of, though, what it makes me think about is how when you're in the midst of something and you're having to learn your lesson, it can seem like you're in the midst of it for so long. And when you get to the other side of it, which is how I see Sarah for her, she's always able to, like, maybe in a page and a half, like put a nice bow on like all this stuff that Lou has been going through. And really, that's how our lives look a lot of times. When you're in the midst of it, it seems like, man, I've been in this spot for forever, been dealing with this thing for forever. And then you look back on it and you're like, oh, this was the short time in my life, and this is what I learned from it. And it's really nice and concise, and it has a nice bow on it. But when you're going through it, it is not so nice. It seems like an eternity. And I think that Sarah really does a good job of like putting a bow on things for Lou after she's been going through this thing for so long.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, because I wanted it to be that because Sarah exists in the future. So she's looking back on her life, and Lou is one of them, one of the lives she's lived. Yeah. And it should be like that for all of us. When we look back, if you think about the first time you fell in love, or the first boy, like it was so intense right then. But you know what? That was cute. You could say that was cute back then. Or, dang, I feel like an idiot even now for doing some of the stuff but you learn from it. And even if they didn't deserve what I was giving them, there's a lesson. And I think that's the whole point of all of this, is to get better, to get stronger, and then try to heal from it, because healing and understanding don't always happen at the same time.
Absolutely not.
That's so true. Speaking of this topic, though, healing, how Sarah is able to put a bow on everything up. I have this passage I want to ask you about. One of my favorite bars, as Scott says, in the book, I stood beside myself, inside myself, all of us an accumulation of our pasts that are always trying to hold on to us, whether we want them or not. That was just so profound to me, to really, and then there are other parts where Sarah was like, what would I have said to myself back then? I love you. If she would have even heard me, I would have loved you, or I would have hugged her if she would have let me. Was really profound, because we do a good bit of talking about loving past versions of ourselves and healing past versions of ourselves, seeing past versions of ourselves. And so it really had me thinking about the title. Is the perishing about stripping former versions of ourselves, sitting with them? What exactly is perishing, I guess, in this story?
That's a great question, Shaté. When I think of perishing, I think of things falling away, things dying. And also, and I don't know how else to say it, and I'm just going to just say it. So when I think of, like people who are Christian, I have my own version, but when they think of hell is like a burning away of all these layers, all these things that aren't pure. It's like all of us, to me, are these super, we're just golden, like the cleanest, most purest gold. That's how I see humanity. But we have all stuff over us that we have to burn away. So the perishing is every layer. I would say stripped away, but it usually hurts. Like the good stuff, the good chunks hurt. So it's like a burning away that you feel as you get down to the pure parts of who we are. And maybe we can see better. So this is the part that burns away first, or we speak better. We speak with kindness, because now our mouths have the, all that, the heart, so I see it as perishing as the parts of us that have to melt away.
For our greatest good, our highest good.
Yeah. The lower version of ourselves, we all got it. And sometimes we can fall into it, jealousy, anger, pettiness, but then there's the higher version of ourselves, and there's still higher still, right? So it's the perishing, it's the parts that have to peel away. And some people are holding on to apocalypses, especially in this country. They just don't, they're like, we could stop the apocalypse.
Yeah. I love that. It just made me think, it's not a question, but thinking of all the moments where there are universal truths that you say in this book that are a lot like that. And another one of the moments when she's at the bridge at the end after she's learned to fight, and she's about to transition and no longer be Lou. And she says something, or it might not have been that part, but there was a part in the book where you say, you don't have to believe in the afterlife. Your belief doesn't validate that there's something beyond us. And that what the beyond is you becoming the highest version of yourself, the greatest part of yourself, all of the good choices that you made, all of the loved ones that you have. And I just sat with that for a little bit and was like, that is just beautiful. Do you know what I mean? The highest, purest form of yourself, as you just said, after everything has perished away. That was really deep.
Thank you so much. And I didn't really think about meaning when I was writing it. It just made sense to write this line and this line. It just made sense. It made sense.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my own hope. It's not in the Bible or anything like, but I believe that we are moving towards the best version of ourselves, and so are the people that are with us. And some people it'll take a little bit longer. So.
Amen.
All right. A question that I have is, why do Natashia and Aaron kind of know that they're immortal, but Lou doesn't?
Mm-hmm. So Natashia and Aaron are broken in some way, and it's not, and there's only hints of it in what Sarah says later about being broken. Once you're broken, have this knowledge, but telling Lou wouldn't have helped her. Like, they didn't feel that it would help her to let her know. It's sort of like the same with in any, like I gave the example of the abusive relationships. Right. Telling people something, telling somebody, that guy's not good for you, does not make you different. It actually can make it worse. Mm-hmm. So they were in their way saving her from knowing, but they're broken the same way Sarah is broken in the future.
What has broken them, though?
I didn't write it in there. That's up to
interpretation.
Broken them in the living, and I didn't add it. And I thought if I ever wrote it again, maybe I would tell, but probably not.
Yeah.
I wanted to. It's a conversation too with readers, so it's not like a book where it's just like plot. Yeah. Because I think readers deserve something more. They deserve to be thinkers, reflectors, and not just told a story. Yeah. But I want them to think and engage and change who they are, maybe, or ask if it's worth changing, and eventually change the situation that we live in the United States, which is what grieves me so deeply in writing The Perishing. It's like, how are we still here?
Yeah, and I think a part of it for me, even around that question about her not knowing that she was immortal, when I think about the work that I do, working in substance abuse programs, and we can I could give my veterans the answers, right? And tell them exactly what they need to do to be clean and sober, to, live what I would believe would be their best lives. But I think one of the lessons that even I had to learn in becoming a better therapist, a better clinician, was that the person has to be ready on their own. Yeah. And that I can't be upset with them if they're not ready to receive the information. My job is to show up and be a clinician every day and support them along that journey. And that's really what I saw the people that were around her doing, like Natashia, everyone, like Goldie, even in her own strange way.
Yeah.
Was a support. She was a very aggressive supporter, right? And protector. But not only protecting her, but protecting like her ability to be able to learn in her own time and to be able to find her way through the things on her own. And so it helped me connect with the work that I do more as well, and just be like, it's not your role to tell or to be upset if they don't hear.
Yeah. You don't steal their learning opportunity.
Right.
Because the only way they're going to do it, because if they listen to your answers, they'll be living your life, not theirs.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, you don't want to rob them of that. Yeah. And also, I just remember when I first started researching for this book and thinking about what you're saying, not giving answers to the homeless vets that you work with, which is so dope, by the way. And Lynn said the same. Yes. Right, Lynn? Is also there is in the Jewish culture, in a certain group of Jewish thinkers. I'm not saying it's just, flat out for all Jewish people, but they have there's a mythology around what's called a Lamed Bavnik. And there are these, I think it's 26 people who are immortal, who do live in the world. And the sort of the mythology behind it is God won't destroy the world for the sake of these 26 people. And when I remember reading about that, and they don't know who they are, they don't even know that they exist, like nobody knows it. And then, something happens. But so I liked that mythology as well, which plays on, you know, when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, and I think it was Abraham is like, will you not destroy it if you find 50 people? And then it got all the way down to 10 people. If you find 10. So it's sort of taken from that story. If you find 10 righteous people, and so it's like 26, God won't destroy all of us. So I like that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just give a nod to Jewish culture.
I like that too. I still though am left thinking on your question, why Letitia and Aaron know. It felt like everybody knew. And then there was this line in there about some people are put here to protect you. And so it felt like everybody was there to protect Lou. Esther was protecting her. Goldie everybody was protecting her. And then I think about Jefferson, who we know, you know, you've told us in the book, or we see that she has visions of him and she's dreamt about him and she's drawn him. So I can't help but believe that he's also an immortal, but he doesn't seem to know it either. And so what's the significance there? People from past lives, and even Aaron knew him. Aaron was like, didn't he look like, you know, so-and-so? And I can't wrap my head around, everybody knew, and Lou didn't, and then clearly Jefferson doesn't know. And I also thought it was very interesting that they had similar experiences in terms of waking up and not remembering where they came from, right? So his accident, and then she wakes up in the alley at the top of the story. So what is all of that about, Sasha?
Great question. No, I'm glad that in writing there's something called good questions and there's bad questions. You know, these are good questions. These are like why that make you think, you know, is there an answer to this? And so this answer of them not having a memory is served two purposes. This is as a craft issue, and also as a science type issue. So we know that in psychology and genetics, there's genetic memory. So we know that trauma can be passed down through generations, and it can actually change the way genes express themselves. So you could be Scott born in Alabama. If you had a version of you in LA who was raised a different way, your genes may express totally different. So things like that. So I wanted them to have no memory so that there's no genetic memory. They just became. Because you cannot be in the United States of America with a lineage that goes back to American slavery the way Scott and I do and not have that. But I didn't want her to have that. I wanted her to experience the world brand new, as if she didn't see color, which, you know, everybody else sees enough color for her. And she realizes really quickly that you can't, there's no such thing as color blindness. I mean, for, you know, seeing the color of someone's skin. So I needed that to be true because none of the rest of the story wouldn't work. And I also wanted to show that there are no lives that are wasted, even a baby that dies in, you know, utero, a baby, you know, every life serves a purpose and it changes us. So Octavia Butler once said, everything you touch, you change. Everything you change changes you. So I wanted them to be at different stages of who they were as Black people, not just in this life, but all those lives that came before. So that's why they wake with no memory, because I wanted them to have no genetic memory and to discover the world and see what's possible. And anyway, they ended up back in the same place anyway. As a Black, they're still Black, right? So to everyone else.
Nice.
Yeah. And also I like the idea that sometimes we meet people and we feel like we've known them forever. And we don't know, right? You have I had a love at first sight moment. I saw my husband in the airport at Heathrow Airport in London, you know, and I knew, I mean, within a minute, I was like, oh my God, I love him. And I called my mom the next day. I was like, I met the man I'm going to marry. It was just that. And that was, we were married, engaged in 3 months, married in 6, and we've been married for 20 years. So it's like, oh, you know, when you meet people. So I just wanted to explore what it feels like when you have those moments like you two clearly have. Like, we can do this today or we can wait. Like, well, how you want to do this?
Whatever you need to do.
I know, so I'll be over here. But
congratulations on 20 years.
Absolutely.
Like Michelle said, deja vu. I wouldn't say it was love at first sight for us, but it was definitely an ease, like a belonging that was just undeniable. Like, we've done this before. I've been here before. They just kind of ushered in, like the thought was like, what was I doing before this? Like, it felt like we had been doing this for forever, Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's beautiful. Scott, what do you say? I see you over there trying to not smile. Tell me.
I'm too cool for but she's right. It felt familiar. I think that's really why we're kind of drawn to the story of, every time she saw him and continued to draw him, there's a familiarity, even with the forgetting, right, and starting over. Like, that person has that kind of, that being embedded in who you are, and I draw my love, and I know that that's my person,
That's interesting.
That's who we are.
Not just romance too, though. But didn't she, when she first saw Aaron in the gym, she was like, kind of looked like a brother. There was something there that she recognized. And so it really did, you're right. You wrote that throughout the book. It felt like in different places that just kind of felt familiar, but couldn't quite place it. That felt like little tiny deja vus, throughout.
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. And so I love that you guys love too. I'm like, because I love love. I love the possibilities, like romantic love, friendship love. The people that I work with, I have to love and respect in a way that, if things go wrong, I'd be a little bit afraid, if they, that kind of respect, not like I think they would hurt, but it's like a respect, a love, a caring, a comfort, an ease. I love that. And in Jefferson, even though he was married, and her, even though she was younger, much younger than he was, it was still there, so, and I wanted to just show that, and still in this lifetime, she doesn't choose him.
So, yes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, that's it.
I was going to say, can we stay there for a second? She didn't choose him because she chose herself. And so I want to talk about self-love for just a second.
Yeah.
We saw something on your site. I think there was an article you had in Bazaar. And there's this line there. I think that's where this is from. You say, how long will it take you to see yourself? It was another bar. And I felt like the perishing, especially Lou's story, was like the embodiment of that thought. Like, how long will it take for you to see yourself that you are a fighter, that you are immortal, that you do have silver in your eye, right? Can you speak more about, how the tones of maybe self-love or self-awareness kind of show up in the book for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me give an example first. So much of the work that I do right now with young people, actors, comedians, and also just teenagers, is about disordered eating, or eating disorders. The way people, think, if I just do this, or the changes, addictions to different changes, and the excuses we give ourselves. And I have this too, because I have big boobs, and the rest of me is little, so I can't find any clothes, or else I'm always looking around like I'm pregnant, so I'm always like, yeah, I'm just going to have a reduction, do this, do that, and I was like, and I found myself using the same language. I just want to look good in my clothes. I just want to, forget that I'm healthy, forget that I'm happy, forget that I can bounce around and my husband's happy. I was like, I'm like, why am I trying to live according to my clothes? Why don't my clothes try to look good on me? Things like that, like changing the conversation about this body that God gave me. He's telling me it's perfect. And I'm saying, nope, actually got, let me criticize you for a second. Let's do some notes. Okay, so number one,
Right.
these boobs, you know, and that's what we do. We talk about how we talk ourselves out of loving ourselves when we're already, you know, and I think about if I could talk to my 20-year-old self when I didn't, you know, when I was more fit and, you know, and I wish I could have that body. You know, I wish. And then I think if I'm going to be 70 years old, if God lets me live to 70, 80, 90, I'm going to look back on this 40-something-year-old version of myself. And I'm going to wish that I had that young little body, hot to trot, running around here again. And so I'm trying to live in the present, like just thanking God. Thank you for my health. Thank you that I got up. Thank you I got a family that's dope, you know, that supports me. You know, and it can be so different. And accepting that it could change. Success looks different at different stages of your life. And forgiving myself for when my version of success was all wrong, was about money.
Skewed. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Good stuff. So I have a thought around, it was in chapter 35, round page 267.
You had not memorize this.
So there's a quote, because most of us live in triage, in what we perceive as a constant threat, not in a place to make good decisions for ourselves or others. This idea, even that we personally sometimes, like around what you were just saying, that we are always have ourselves in triage. We are never like relaxed to the point to where we can just enjoy the life that we have. Right. So, and it's kind of, there are two sides of it for me, that we don't give ourselves that grace to not be in triage, to not always be practicing self-improvement, to not always be in the gym and on some different eating program, all those things. You know, that thought really, really stuck with me, that we are operating from a place of just being in triage and not allowing ourselves to like enjoy the life, to stop and smell the flowers and look around and like enjoy what it is that we have. And I know that I don't want to be, if God gives me 80 years, I don't want to be 80 like, man, what was I doing at 44?
Yeah.
When, you know, I could be young and wild and free. I was so worried about all these other things. I think it was just a very significant point. And I think that's why I remember it. So just the idea that we are in a constant state of triage is wild.
And we could choose. We can choose at any moment to turn a different way. And the only one that really cares about it is us, like the old us that we're actually burning away. That's the part that's holding on. Like we can literally walk out the door. It's going to cost money, because anytime you're breaking cycles, whether you're a battered woman or whatever, it's going to cost you money to leave your pain. So they have organizations called the Purple Purse, for instance, for women who are leaving abusive relationships, because it recognizes that to change your life, it costs money and it's going to hurt you. And that's what most people are afraid to do. That's a huge hurdle. But you could change your life at any time. And triage, especially, like I'm going back to disordered eating. When I work with people, they're just on my mind and on my heart right now. Anorexia, bulimia, things like that. A lot of it, you know, it starts being emotional eating. So I have to slow patients down. Why are you eating right now? You know, that's actually the triage. That's how you calm yourself. You know, the eating, it brings it down, because you can't just get out and walk right now because you're in triage. You're not on vacation. So how am I going to go walk? How am I going to treat this emotion differently? So like even food, and then getting rid of it is feeling sadness, depression, feeling, you know, insecure. So identifying, for instance, what those emotions are, and all that is triage when you're not regulated emotionally, what they call emotionally regulated, which, you know, it's just trying to find that middle point, you know, and helping people to stop and recognize that.
The other part of it that's important for me when I also think about this particular passage is what we were talking about earlier, about like where we are as a country. and not wanting to deal with like our true history, right? Not wanting to call a thing a thing. I think that keeps us in a state of triage too, and repeating patterns and all of those things, because we are repeating chaos that we should have learned from. And because people don't want to have
just pause on that. We are repeating chaos. Thank you for that. I just need to I will put that in the quote. I will put that in the question. Okay, I'm sorry.
But just electing to do that, right, on a grander scale. And I think that we suffer as an entire country, as a people, because we don't want to just call a thing and like deal with it so that we can address what it is. And it keeps us in a constant state of triage, and a constant state of like, we're just trying to, let me just poke here and do this and put a Band-Aid on this thing, and not actually deal with the actual issue that we need to deal with in order to get to the healing and the reconciliation.
The root of it. Yep.
That's really good. That's really, we don't want to feel bad. It's the same thing. We don't want to feel bad. So we're going to do this thing that keeps us from feeling bad about ourselves. But you know what? It's just, sometimes we have to deal with the darkness to get to the light.
Absolutely. Amen to that. This is a really great conversation. I want to pause for a second and see if we had any questions that we wanted to take from the folks who've joined us. Let's see if we've got any. Not seeing any, but we did see some thoughts about groundedness. And Joyce said that this is such a deep, necessary, dope conversation. Thank you, Joyce. We appreciate that. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will raise them up. But where can we go next with this? I mean, I have so many thoughts and wonderings about this. If I could just ask another question about some of the folks in the book.
I have a question. Can I ask a question for both? Okay, so real talk. This is an area that is really hard to go into as a Black woman. And, you guys are the Love Hayes podcast. When we talk about Black love, like we can't even get to us for the, because we're protecting, and our protectors are hurting us. So that's where we are at a sort of state of our nation. And you guys have managed to find this Black love, which I try to write about in the perishing. Tell me what it means to you, how you see the importance of Black love in a time of chaos.
I'm going to say this at the risk of sounding cliche, but I believe it with every fiber of my being, that I think the reason that we have Black love, that there is a Black love between us, is that we have decided to love ourselves first. I came to him into this relationship having decided that even if I don't feel it right now, I'm going to affirm that I'm enough. I'm going to love all the versions of myself. I'm going to figure out what that looks like. I'm going to live my best life. If I don't ever have anybody, I will be enough. My grandmother, the way she says it, 1 is a whole number. That means I bring my whole 1. You bring your whole 1.
I'll drink to that. This is just
Salute. Yeah. So, and he's very much the same way. That we met on an online dating app, and the thing that made me swipe whichever way it was I had to swipe, he said something about reconciling the books every day of his life. And I was like, yes, like that's exactly it. So I don't feel like I have a project. He is committed to his own healing and wholeness and wellness. And I think because we don't make the other person responsible for our joy, we make ourselves responsible for our joy.
Right.
That is what gives us, I think, this beautiful version of our Black love.
Right. Okay, this is good. Let me ask you a follow-up question because I love it. Okay. Do you still, as being individuals who are working on bringing joy to your own selves, do you feel like you want to bring joy to your partner, to the other person, because of that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that, a life well lived kind of exists in like our joyous moments. And also, I think that we have learned so much, especially as it relates to Black love and Black people. We've lived and been taught lives of surviving, right? And I believe that our higher power has called us to thrivership, not survivorship. And so it's up to us to like rise above just like talking about surviving things and just getting through them. But what about thriving? What about living in abundance? What about all of God's promises that we're supposed to have here? I don't want to have to be in a coffin before I walk into this thing and the pearly gates and all those things. And, you know, I have my relationship with God, but I believe that our joy and our happiness exist here with our partners, with our families, and that we have to choose joy and we have to choose healing and we have to choose to like go through these things in life and find our own way, much like Lou had to find her own way. But I believe that there are people who are in our lives who are there to help to guide us. Right. And, you know, as we figure it out, we hope that even our conversations about how we're figuring out whatever it is at the moment is able to free somebody else to just be like, I'm not weird. Right. I'm experiencing these things, so many things that I went through in dating and in marriage. My parents were able to tell me on the back end that they experienced some of those same things, but they never talked about it. It was hush hush. Right. We talk about grown people stuff in front of kids. Then I had this idea of perfection that didn't exist only because people didn't have the conversation.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question then, Scott. 10 years ago, what did success look like to you? What is success, if you could think back 10 years ago to yourself at that age, what did success or thriving mean to you? And then I'll ask you what it means to you today.
So then it meant like a good job, material, being able to have a nice house, things that I would collect, that type of thing. And I thought that was what happiness looked like then, because I would meet people and they'd be like, well, what's your 5-year career plan? And, where do you want to live? And, where do you want your kids to go to school and that kind of thing.
Sabotaging stuff. No.
And it's very, very different for me now. It has nothing to do with, the wealth that I may amass. And I'm unopposed to having money, right? And to going on nice vacations. Amen. But it's not what success looks like for me anymore. I think this partnership, the ability to be on this platform with my cousin who's written a book, and for me to read that book and to have some conversation from a different perspective about what that looks like, and to be able to see some of myself, some of my work in what I read in your book, and to be able to discuss those perspectives. This is success. Amen. Like we're doing this for, for the love, right?
Right.
And success looks like that. This is thrivership to me. Yeah. This is me and my partner talking with my cousin about her success in this book and how much it means to who we are as people, and being able to see ourselves in that. That is what success looks like.
Mama, we made it.
Amen. No. I love that. And I see a question from Nisi, from Michelle. Shout out to Love Hayes. She says, do you think Lou found her joy when she chose herself over her love interest? Yeah, I think you have to choose yourself first. And I think Lou did that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't love yourself first, you end up accidentally or maybe intentionally becoming a mat for other people to wipe their feet on, who love themselves just a little bit more than you, but maybe not as much as they need to love themselves. And it can get worse and worse as you go along. So I wanted her to choose to live, not because she had a man, but because she already had herself. Yes. So that's what I wanted that to represent, the love she had.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I mean, so many tiny things are coming up for me that maybe we can just offline and keep talking about this. Book.
You know where to find me.
Yes. Is this a time where ER comes back and tells everyone how to join this conversation by purchasing this book so they can have their own set of questions?
Yes. we would love for y'all to purchase this book from Charis. It really does help us when you buy the event books directly from us. And you can do that by clicking this teal link at the bottom center of the screen. We really, really, really love for you to let folks in your neighborhood or in your faith communities or in your child's school even know about the book, because we really, one of the best ways you can support an author is get their book in your local library, get their book on your church book club circuit, like whatever you can do. Word of mouth matters a lot, and we want to support our authors who come through here. So please spread the word about the Perishing. You can also get the audiobook through Libro FM, which is our independent audiobook service that we love. So if you are somebody who prefers to listen to it, it's a great audiobook. That's another really good way. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't have time to read a paper book, but if you got to commute, audiobook is the way to go. So we are really grateful to all of y'all for being here with us tonight, and wish you all continued success in all that you do, and are very grateful that you chose to celebrate with us at Charis. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, stay safe and take care. And let's get the Perishing out into the hands of many more readers.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much, everybody.
Thank
Good night.
you.